Morning sunlight filtered through the cracked windows of Mike's garage. The place smelled of rust, oil, and faintly of tobacco, the scent Mike Reynolds associated with his father's ghost. The old man had been gone for more than 10 years, but the garage still seemed to breathe with his presence. His tools arranged just so, his faded army photo pinned above the workbench, his name burned into the heart of every bolt Mike tightened. 41-year-old Mike stood hunched over an engine, sleeves rolled, fingers blackened with grease. Silence was his companion, broken only by the faint hum of an old radio and the metallic tap of a socket wrench. Outside, the Arizona mountains loomed in the distance, still streaked with the last snow of spring. Inside, time moved slower, and that was exactly how Mike liked it. He lived in a world of engines and carburetors, where problems made sense and could be solved with patience. People were more complicated, so he let the town pass him by while he fixed the things others had given up on. Old tractors, beat-up pickups, a lawn mower or two. Most paid in cash. A few paid in homemade pies or elk jerky. Mike never asked for more. At exactly 9:15, the bell above the garage door jingled. Mike didn't look up at first. People didn't usually come dressed in designer clothes. "Excuse me," a woman's voice said, calm and measured, but carrying the subtle cadence of someone used to being obeyed. Mike turned, wiping his hands on a rag. A woman in her 30s stood in the doorway, framed by sunlight. Her dark navy coat was tailored, her expression unreadable, but what caught Mike off guard were her pale green eyes. "I was told you might be able to help with something unusual," the woman said. Mike tilted his head. "Unusual how?" Instead of answering, she motioned toward the curb. Mike followed her outside. Parked in front of the garage was a car that belonged in a museum. A pearl gray 1973 Dodge Charger GT, as sleek as a yacht, with chrome details from a forgotten era. This wasn't just a car. It radiated history and reverence. Its wide hood caught the sunlight, its windows reflecting the sky. "I'll be damned," Mike murmured, walking slowly around it. "This is a 1973 Charger GT. Only a handful ever built. My dad used to talk about this engine like it was the Holy Grail." He placed his hand gently on the hood as if touching a sacred object. "It hasn't run in over 18 years, the woman said, her voice carrying a hint of melancholy. "No one has managed to restore it. Most won't even try." Mike crouched down, examining signs of rot, corrosion, and missing parts underneath the car. Rust hidden behind the wheels, black fluid dripping beneath. "Looks like someone tried poorly and gave up," Mike said with professional assessment. The woman's voice softened. "I haven't." There was a quiet determination in those words. Mike stood and met her gaze. There was something in her tone, defiance, pride, and underneath it, sorrow. "You're the owner?" "I inherited it from my father," she replied, maintaining eye contact. Mike nodded. "You'll need parts that don't exist anymore, wiring that predates modern schematics," he said honestly. "And even if I can get her started, there's no guarantee she'll run clean. This won't be an easy job." "I'm not looking for a guarantee," said the woman. "Just someone who won't quit before trying." A long silence hung between them as the spring breeze played with the hem of her coat. "You got a name?" Mike asked. "Rachel," she said simply. "Rachel Davidson." The name hit like a dropped wrench. Davidson Motors, Robert Davidson, the pioneer of American automotive design whose mysterious death in a plane crash had ended one of the most iconic family legacies in engineering history. "I can't pay you what it's worth," she added. "Not in money. But if you do this, you'll be part of something that matters. Something that shouldn't be forgotten." Mike looked at the car again. He imagined the engine sleeping beneath the dust, waiting for a steady hand and a bit of hope. He thought of his father, wide-eyed, describing how Davidson engines purred like they had souls. "I'll take a look," he said finally. "No promises." Rachel extended her hand. "That's all I'm asking." They shook hands, firm, warm, and for a moment time seemed to pause. Two lives, wildly different, suddenly tethered by a piece of steel and history. The next day Mike arrived at the garage early. He found an old binder labeled, "Davidson Legacy Engines." It had belonged to his father, filled with handwritten notes, engine schematics, and repair tips. Some of the diagrams were so old the paper had yellowed and curled. When he opened the hood, the engine was indeed a marvel, but it had suffered from years of neglect and at least 2 botched restoration attempts. Several critical parts were either missing or replaced with modern substitutes that didn't fit. Whoever last worked on this engine didn't have enough knowledge. Around noon, the garage door creaked open. Rachel stepped inside, this time wearing jeans and a jacket, her hair pulled back in a practical braid. No designer blouse, no heels. She looked more like someone stopping by a hardware store. The transformation was impressive. Someone who could adapt to different worlds. Rachel stood silently by the car, hands in her pockets, eyes following the movement of Mike's hands. "You always this quiet?" Mike asked. "Depends on who I'm with," Rachel said with a slight shrug. Mike explained the damage to her. The starter was corroded, manifolds cracked, wiring harness a nightmare, and there was a massive vacuum leak. "Can it be fixed?" Rachel asked, a mixture of hope and concern in her voice. Mike paused. "Anything can be fixed if you care enough. The question is whether it's worth the time." Rachel said softly, "I care." Mike watched her for a moment, then nodded. "Then it's worth it." As the afternoon progressed, Rachel didn't leave. She didn't talk much, but she held the flashlight when he needed it, handed him tools. While Mike worked, she even swept the floor quietly. Rachel walked slowly around the car, trailing her fingers along the curve of the rear fender. "My father used to sit me in the passenger seat when I was a kid," she murmured. "He said the engine had a heartbeat that if you listened closely enough you could feel it." "Your dad was right," said Mike. Rachel gave a small, wistful smile. "He was always better with machines than people." "You're not the only one who grew up that way," Mike replied. Rachel looked up. "Did he teach you everything?" "Pretty much," said Mike. "I was 12 when he let me rebuild my first carburetor. After that, I never stopped." "What happened to him?" Rachel asked gently. "Heart attack 10 years ago, right here in this garage," Mike said, clearing his throat. "I'm sorry," said Rachel. "What about yours?" "Plane crash," said Rachel. "Business trip. I was in law school when it happened." "Law school?" "I left. It wasn't for me." Mike wanted to ask more, but something in her posture told him not to push. "This car, it means a lot to you," Mike said. Rachel nodded. "It's the only thing he left me that wasn't paperwork or expectations. The last thing he touched before the crash. He'd just finished working on it, said it would be the start of something new." Mike looked at the engine. "Then let's make sure it runs." Days turned into weeks. Rachel became a regular at the garage, sometimes bringing food, sometimes just watching. One day she brought coffee and opened up. "My father built Davidson motors from scratch. Started in a one-room shed with borrowed money and 2 workers. By the time I was 10, he was employing over 30,000 people." "I know," said Mike. "My dad used to read about him in car magazines like he was a folk hero." Rachel gave a short, humorless laugh. "That's how the world saw him. But what they didn't see was the pressure, the deals, the compromises. My father was a genius, but he was tired long before the plane crash. The company was expanding too fast. Investors wanted quicker returns. They started cutting corners on quality to save costs," Rachel said, her voice tinged with bitterness. "My father hated it. He said if they ruined the integrity of the machine, they'd lose the soul of the company. This car was supposed to be his rebellion. One last engine built entirely by hand his way. No shortcuts, no approvals, just him and the machine. He said it would be the last honest thing he made." Rachel's voice dropped. "And then he died and everything was shelved." Mike responded, "There's something left. Right here in every bolt, every line. You're the one who didn't let it rot away." "I thought restoring it might bring me answers or peace," said Rachel. Mike replied, "It won't, not by itself, but it's a damn good place to start." A few days later, Rachel returned looking tense. "I have a meeting in Denver tomorrow. The board wants me to finalize a deal to sell the company." "Sell Davidson?" Mike's voice was concerned. "They've been pushing for years," said Rachel. "Ever since Dad died. They want to liquidate and merge with a European group. Clean profit, efficient, no more emotional baggage." Mike asked, "What do you want?" Rachel hesitated. "I don't know. I thought I did, but ever since I brought this car here, things feel different." "Mike, maybe that's because you've finally come back to your father's idea of what this company used to be." Rachel worried, "I can't stop the deal. I only hold 35%. The rest belongs to people who care about profit margins, not spark plugs." Mike shrugged. "Then let them make their money. But you, You've got something they'll never have. What's that? A reason. Weeks passed. Mike worked on the car, replacing old parts, finding new ones, making some himself. The Dodge Charger slowly began to come back to life. The first attempt failed, the engine sputtering out with a pitiful cough. That was something, Rachel offered diplomatically. Mike laughed. Progress. Painful but still progress. What if we take her up to Eagle Peak? Rachel suggested. It's quiet and beautiful this time of year. She may not last long on the incline, but it would be a worthy first test. Mike was skeptical. You sure you want to try that with an engine that can't commit to a driveway? Rachel smiled. That's what makes it an adventure. A few days later, they drove the car up to Eagle Peak. While driving on the mountain road, Mike shared his past. Rachel told him how her father had brought her here before he died. He told me I could be anything, but he hoped I'd come home someday. Do you think he'd be proud of what you've done? Mike asked. Rachel, I think he'd be proud I brought the car back. And maybe because I'm not afraid of the questions anymore, but the answers. Mike parked at the summit. Rachel breathed in the mountain air. He wanted me to find people who believed in craftsmanship, in passion, she said, gazing at the rocky landscape. Mike, you already found them. Rachel nodded, her eyes glistening. You're the first person who reminded me what that felt like. A week later, Rachel sat in Davidson Tower in Detroit. The merger plans were laid out before her, financial projections and consolidation plans. Tom Matthews, the CFO, leaned forward. We've waited a long time for this, Rachel. This deal will make the company leaner, faster, and more competitive globally. It's what your father would have wanted. Rachel closed the folder. Don't tell me what my father would have wanted. Tom smirked. Then perhaps you can enlighten us. What do you want? Rachel answered without hesitation. I want to keep the company whole. I want to reinvest in legacy craftsmanship. Small-scale builds, engine innovation, community partnerships, training programs. An executive laughed. This isn't a charity. The automotive world runs on tech and speed. Tom added, you don't have the votes to stop the merger. Rachel conceded, no, but I have 35% and enough public influence to make your press release read like an obituary. In the end, Rachel won the right to manage the classic models designed by her father and take over an old factory. She returned to Arizona the same day victorious. That evening she came to the garage. I said no, I'm not selling, she told Mike. They were furious but had to give me time. I'll make my plan. And how do you feel now? Mike asked. Rachel, like a weight I've been carrying for 10 years has lifted. I did the right thing. Mike approached the motor. Then maybe it's time to stop fighting the wrong battles and start building something that's ours. Rachel tilted her head. Ours? Mike smiled. You've got vision, I've got hands. Together we could turn this place into something more than a garage. A school, a community hub, maybe even a small production workshop for classic cars. Rachel's heart raced. I'd need time, she said. Capital, a team. Mike nodded. You'll figure that part out, you always do. You know this would be a risk, right? Rachel asked. Walking away from everything. The board, the company, the name? Mike shrugged. Sometimes you've got to lose your last name to find your first one. Mike gestured to the engine. We brought her back to life. Maybe now it's our turn. Rachel took a breath. I'm in, she said. This wasn't just a business proposal. It was a path to a life. On a stormy evening, Rachel appeared at the garage, soaked from the rain. Her hair clung to her cheeks, her jacket darkened with water. Something new was noticed. No ring on her left hand. I signed the final papers, she said softly. Davidson Motors is still theirs, but the name, the patents, and the hand-built division, they're mine now. All legal, all official. A plan for a new beginning. Rachel stepped forward. She pulled the small gold band from her pocket and set it down on the workbench. The gesture was quiet but peaceful, leaving an old life behind. It was my father's idea, she said, the engagement, not the man. A corporate connection, not for love but for company value. Mike, arranged. Rachel smiled. Not officially, but there were too many expectations. He was kind, ambitious, but he didn't see me, just part of the plan. You never had a plan? Rachel asked. Nope, said Mike simply. I had tools and time and engines. Life is too random to organize everything. Rachel touched the car's hood, her fingers tracing the metal. This car brought me back to my father, to myself. But you made me stay. Here with you I feel real again. Mike moved closer. You're not lost, he said. You just needed a place that didn't ask you to prove anything. Rachel, and maybe someone who reminded me what love should feel like. She reached out her hand. This, whatever it is, I want you to know that this is the first thing I've chosen for myself. Not the company, not the legacy you. Mike took her hand. Rachel whispered, do you believe in starting over? Mike smiled. I believe in rebuilding things that matter. The next morning, Rachel brought an old notebook of her father's. I found this last night among things sent from his office. Inside were hybrid engine designs, schematics for the future, and notes. My father wasn't just restoring the legacy, he was reimagining it, said Rachel. He was working on a new hybrid drive system before modern trends. Mike examined the notes. Written in the margin was, build slow, build true. Someone will finish what I started. Do you think he meant you? Mike asked. Rachel, I think he meant someone who cared more about meaning than margin. Maybe that's you. Maybe it's us. Mike, if we're going to do this, we do it right. No cutting corners, no chasing trends, just real machines built with love. Rachel's eyes brightened. Agreed. There's an old hangar outside of town, said Mike. It could be a big workshop. Rachel, what will we call it? Not Davidson, something completely ours. Mike thought. True Craft Motors? The name hung in the air. I love it, said Rachel. Not just about form but integrity. They explored the hangar, dreams taking shape. They planned teams, made designs. A vision was forming. One evening while Mike was working alone in the garage, he found an old photograph. Himself at 12 years old with his father standing in front of this very Dodge Charger at a car show. On the back was written, it's in him. He just needs someone to believe. Mike whispered, I believe. At the Arizona Heritage Auto Festival, the Dodge Charger was finally revealed to the public. It gleamed under the spring sun, proof of months of work and the dedication of two people. Mike and Rachel stood beside the car. Rachel took the microphone and spoke. My name is Rachel Davidson and I stand here today not as a corporate executive, but as a daughter. My father built this car in the final year of his life, not for profit but for sincerity. He believed the soul of engineering lay not in speed but in integrity. Mike didn't just rebuild the engine. He reminded me that purpose isn't found in legacy alone, but in what we choose to carry forward. Some people clapped. Others wiped their eyes as if touched by the story. Mike sat in the driver's seat, turned the ignition key. After a moment's hesitation, the engine came to life with a deep, smooth rumble. The crowd erupted, shouts and applause echoing in the air. Rachel closed her eyes. It had all been worth it. Then Mike drove the car around the festival grounds, shifting gears smoothly. As he looped around the center and returned, the cheers grew louder. Photographers snapped photos, children pointed, and older enthusiasts watched with misty eyes. Mike parked the car and stepped out. Rachel came to his side. That was his moment, she said. Mike replied, and yours. Rachel smiled, ours. At the opening of True Craft Motors, Mike and Rachel stood side by side. The sun was setting, painting the sky with orange and purple streaks. Everyone had gone. It was a time of silence and peace. We did it, said Mike with a deep sense of pride. No, Rachel whispered, we're doing it. Pointing not to a completed task but to an ongoing journey. Mike laughed. You always have to be precise. Rachel smiled. One of us has to be. I never thought I'd find this, said Rachel, looking at the new workshop taking shape around them. Not just the garage but you. Mike replied, I never thought I deserved this. Rachel, you didn't just deserve it, Mike. You built it, bolt by bolt, word by word. She placed her hand on his cheek. You used your skill with your hands to build good things, but this time you built more than machines. You built a future. Mike put his arm around her waist. For a mechanic like me, everything is fixable. Broken cars, broken dreams, broken promises. With time, patience, and the right tools. He looked at Rachel, seeing the transformation in this long journey. We've both been broken for a long time, haven't we? Rachel nodded. The mechanic and the heiress. A broken world, two people trying to pick up the pieces. Like the old Dodge Charger, we've both come a long way. Then let's keep building, said Mike. Rachel smiled and they stood there, two silhouettes framed by the light of a place they had brought back to life, not because it was easy or profitable or part of anyone's plan, but because it mattered. And as the Dodge Charger rested in the background, engine cool but heart warm, it was clear this wasn't just a story about a car. It was a story about choosing again, choosing love, choosing purpose, choosing to believe when no one else did. And for Mike and Rachel, that choice, made not in gold or ceremony but in tools and trust, was the one that had changed everything. And this time it would last. In the weeks after the opening, True Craft Motors quickly took shape. The old hangar was transformed. New workspaces, training stations, and a showroom for classic cars were created. Rachel brought special tools, original parts, and treasures of automotive history from Detroit. Mike started an internship program for local youth, teaching them classic engine restoration and maintenance. Electric cars are nice, he said to a young intern one day, but to understand the soul and story inside these engines, you need time and attention. Rachel spoke with potential buyers from New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles, introducing them to a new model for preserving the Davidson legacy. Soon, collectors were bringing old Davidson models to the workshop for restoration. With each customer, Rachel and Mike shared not just a car but a story. One morning, Rachel came into the workshop office with a wide smile. Mike was working at his drawing table designing a new custom model. "Guess what happened?" said Rachel. "Someone from Detroit called back." Mike could see her excitement. "No better." He pulled out a file. "We got patents for at least a dozen of my father's final designs. And the really good news, we have funding to build the prototype for our first hybrid classic engine." Mike stood up. "The designs from Robert's notebook." Rachel nodded. "Exactly. Davidson Motors said it wasn't profitable or practical. But we know it's valuable." Mike looked at the files, feeling deep satisfaction. "So your father was right. Someone really is finishing what he started." Rachel put her arm on Mike's shoulder as they looked at the project together. "You know, all of this because of a car. Because no one wanted to fix it, something that no one bothered to repair." Mike smiled. "Maybe sometimes someone needs to see potential that others can't." He looked at Rachel, the double meaning of his words clear.